This time I'm installing BBK Shorty Headers. So these are the BBK equal tube, equal length Shorty Headers for the 96 and 99 Chevy and GMC trucks and SUVs for the 5 liter and 5.7 liter small blocks Chevys, something, yeah. It's part number 4007, and if you're interested, I'll throw a link down in the description. And also, these are the titanium coated headers. And here they are, made in America, born and built. Nice. Alright, so that's the driver's side. Not too bad. Alright, and there's the passenger side. I've got some stickers and instructions there, and then gaskets in here still. Hardware. And then gaskets. So looks like that's everything. So just wanted to check here. The only review for this set of headers on Summit says the flange doesn't fit with the factory exhaust. So BBK says this is a factory replacement part. So here's the old donut that I just replaced not that long ago. And yeah, so that looks like, you know, that's not going to clip in there the same way it did before. But that should just bolt right up to the factory exhaust then. Overall, I would say that these look pretty good. However, if you're somebody that is all about a perfect finish, I can see where the negative reviews online for these come from. Because, let's see if you can see it here. There are some like striation marks. You know, I don't know what that's from. There's kind of all over little lines like that. And there's a couple little spots. Here's one. A little spot of welding spatter. I don't really care about that. These look good enough for me. They look a lot better than what's on there, so that doesn't bother me at all. But if your biggest concern is how they look, you might want to keep that in mind. You might want to go for the polished version of these. There you can see those lines a little bit there. But like I said, that doesn't bother me in the slightest, so I'm quite happy with these. They look like they're very well made, thick flanges, good gaskets, you know, all the hardware is here, so I think these were a good choice, so work on getting them installed. Now, I'm fortunate that I've had basically all of the exhaust disconnected here in the last 6 months, and all of the hardware is new. One of the hardest parts of this job is usually just getting all the rusty stuff broken free without breaking bolts. I don't have to worry about that. The only thing I haven't had off is the EGR tube back here. So I have been blasting that with penetrant with PB Blaster for a couple of days now to loosen that up. So I need to break that nut loose on that tube. And then it's just a matter of taking the manifolds off, the 3 bolts on the collector flange, and then the 6 bolts that bolt it to the head. I do need to disconnect the spark plug wires, and I may need to disconnect the steering shaft, pop that off, and slide that over here a little bit to make room, but we'll see. So for the passenger side here, it's even simpler because there's no EGR tube, so it's just the 6 bolts holding the manifold to the head, and then the 3 holding it to the rest of the exhaust down below there. Here's a comparison of the passenger side manifold versus the header. Okay, well, once you pull the dipstick out like you're supposed to, they go in without too much trouble. Didn't even take the spark plugs out. I did take the spark plug wires off and got those out of the way, and then of course I had taken the air box out to start with here. But passenger side is installed on the head. I still need to go put the collector bolts in down there, and then finish up with the driver's side. So the other tip for getting that EGR tube off the back here, in addition to spraying it with penetrant, is heat. So before trying to break that loose, I'm going to go ahead and heat that nut up really good, and hopefully that will help break it loose, because I unfortunately don't have the right size wrench for that, so I'm using an adjustable wrench, and we know how those work. So just want to give myself every opportunity. Same thing if your exhaust is original or just old and rusty, make sure you blast it with penetrant, and then make sure you heat it up as well to give yourself the best shot to get it off. Well, I have been unsuccessful in getting this EGR tube nut off. Using a long 1-inch wrench, I really just can't get enough bite on there. I did see a video where somebody took a wrench like this and cut the end open here, cut it short, and made that work right against it. I don't really want to cut up this wrench. I just ordered a couple of short wrenches and an angled wrench and a crow's foot. But those aren't going to be here until tomorrow, and I was getting impatient. So what I'm going to try to do here is remove the manifold with the EGR tube attached. So I've disconnected the end of the EGR tube back here behind the AC compressor at the top of the intake manifold. So the tube is loose. Just need to undo the PCV and probably the coolant temp sensor wiring here so that I can get the tube out. Hopefully get all of that out as one piece, and then once it's out, it should be a lot easier to break that nut loose. So, more than one way to do that. Okay. And now we can get to this nut and hopefully crack that off there without destroying that tube. Okay, now for the slightly more fun part. Oh, I forgot to take the brackets off. So I guess I need to do that real quick. Okay, let's try that again. I think that's pretty much it right there. Go get the gaskets. Okay, well, I ran into a little issue here. This front little bit edge of the flange is hitting. It's hitting this bracket here and just keeping it from lining up. So, okay, installed. Definitely had a little trouble down here with, for whatever reason, with this bracket and contacting this front little corner of the flange. But after a little bit of persuasion, was able to get them in there. So now I just need to reattach the collector down there, reinstall the EGR tube, and then hook the spark plugs and everything else back up, and this should be a job wrapped up. And here is the other little problem that I ran into. On the end of the EGR tube, I could not get this nut to break free. So let that sit overnight with a bunch of penetrating fluid, and I was just able to get this broken free. So saved me from having to spend $80 or $100 on a new EGR tube. So now this can go back in. So just another quick tip, I had to pull the EGR tube back out after I got it in because the nut was not freed up enough. So before you put it back in, make sure you really break both ends free on these nuts so that you can spin them freely when you put it back in the car. Okay, and here's everything reattached. So let's fire it up and see what it sounds like. Alright, well, we'll let that get a little bit warm there and then we'll let it cool off. Because I think that's what you're supposed to do for the ceramic coating. Get it warm, let it cool several times to fully cure before you get it really, really good and hot. Let's go for a drive. So I don't know if that's coming through on video, but you can definitely hear more sound coming through down here at the collector area than you could before, even though it's not very much louder at the tailpipe as you just heard. So there's definitely a little bit more sound coming through here. So I do think part of the sound that's coming through is I think I've still got a little bit of an exhaust leak, whether that's coming from the header gasket itself or the EGR tube, I'm not sure yet. A couple of quick thoughts about these headers and installing these. Like I said earlier on, it definitely does work with the factory donut gasket. However, if you're doing these, I would strongly consider at least welding on new reducers to your existing exhaust to eliminate that donut gasket, because it's definitely a restriction, and I'm sure you're not getting the full performance benefit with that in there. It's also very easy to over tighten that donut gasket or get that in there a little bit crooked and totally destroy it in the process, since the headers aren't really designed with the ball and socket style flange. And then the other invaluable tip from this install is that 1-inch crow's foot wrench. Definitely go ahead and buy that before you do this job and just save yourself the headache and the frustration, because it's only like $7. I'll throw a link to that down in the description if you're interested. But I think that's going to do it for this install. Like this video if you did. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Comment down below if you've got something to add. Check out vehiclegarage.com in between videos for more content. And I will see you next time.